Hey guys, welcome to another episode of In Your Mind with me, Paul Trautwein. Today we are meeting with Kayla Trautwein. She is a happiness coach for high achievers, an author, a musician, and just an all-around amazing person. I'm so excited for you guys to dive deep with her today. So have some fun and check it out. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of In Your Mind with me. And I want everyone to give a huge welcome to Kayla Trautwein. Kayla, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, Paul, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for everyone who's tuning in right now.
Yeah, so I start everybody with the same question, and hopefully you prepared. But I like to start from the get-go, from the beginning. So tell us a little bit about Kayla as a little girl.
Ooh, that's a good question. So I would say that I've had this running theme my entire lifetime that was very apparent in childhood. I kind of always had these two versions of me. There was this fun-loving, humorous person who was a leader in any situation. I remember being in kindergarten and my kindergarten teacher told my parents that she's going to be CEO one day. I guess my leadership skills in the kindergarten classroom were above average or something. But anyways, I've always been kind of that high achiever on the surface, but then underneath, even from a very, very young age, I experienced horrible anxiety. Like I remember being so nervous to go to school, I would make myself sick and then beg to stay home. And that was kind of my life for the first 25 years. Is just on the surface, people thinking that I'm this funny, high achieving person, but then underneath experiencing really bad anxiety, negative thoughts. And unfortunately, I experienced that in childhood too. So
When you were a child and you were experiencing it, is there anything that you like, was it just like, I have no idea, this just is how it's always been? Or is there anything you can even pinpoint it to?
um not really. I think there are a lot of reasons why we have these tendencies,
Yeah.
but I'm also very highly sensitive. I don't know if you've heard of that trait, being a highly
Mm-hmm.
sensitive person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So are you?
Yeah, an HSP. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So it's like on top of feeling all those emotions, they're 10 times as extreme. So it's weird. I used to tell my parents that I didn't feel like I was alive because I realized later on what I was doing is I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I would actually dissociate. And I'd wake up in conversation with my teacher or my schoolmates, not knowing how I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just because that emotion was just so overwhelming. So I think a lot of it was, there's some genetic factors, some things happen in childhood, but the sensitivity thing was a big part of that.
When did you feel good to talk to your parents about it?
it's we had a lot going on in childhood, so it's funny, like my parents never really knew what was going on. I think I just, like, up until about the age of 20, I just held the belief that some people are born happy and then other people, like me, that's kind of my lot in life. And so I guess I didn't really know that there was anything different. And there were moments of joy. Like my mom always says, I had no idea that you felt like this because you seem so happy. But I think I just didn't even know that you could actually be happy. So I didn't know how to talk about it.
It's crazy. I'm listening to your life, and all I can think of is like, it's this exact thing probably as mine. And I'm sure it's tons of other people that don't, express it or find it. I think it's amazing that, in your early 20s, you got to figure that, right? Like connect the dots. Because I think a lot of people, they can go that lifetime, right? With never doing that or feeling that. I was the exact same way. I can't even remember a time like I wasn't. And my parents and family used to joke about like, oh, you're just sick all the time. And that's just because how it would like manifest. I would be sick, I mean, almost daily, like multiple times a week. And I had no idea what it was either, to be honest. Like I did not even think. I thought no one thought the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'm just
maybe just broken, right?
Yeah, broken, something. Like I think we talked about this like my first episode, like I constantly as a child would try and listen to everything someone wasn't saying when they were talking to me and see if there was like a hidden meaning, like they weren't telling me exactly what they wanted or how they said it or the tone or just all of that. But just like you, I wasn't I don't think super out there when I was younger. Maybe in high school I got a little bit more up and ready, and but yeah, no one would know. Even
Mhm.
people that I talk about now would there's still people that actually just watch this show that are like, I have no idea who
Mm,
that person was, but it's like,
yeah.
yeah, that person's inside the whole time.
Yeah, I experienced that too when I came out with my coaching program. I got so many messages like, what? Like, I had no idea that you experienced anxiety or any of these things because it's just when you're holding it together on the surface, it's everything always feels so much worse than you think it comes out on the outside.
So tell me about how you got from essentially living in your head, right? And living in that space to, I've realized that this doesn't have to be that way. How did you find that connection?
Yeah, so luckily I had the fortune of going away to college, and that was transformational. I went to UC San Diego, and my sophomore year, when I was 20, I randomly took a philosophy class. Like I had to fill credits, and I was like, oh, Aristotle 101 sounds interesting. And so I took that class, and that was the first time where I realized that instead of just accepting my thoughts and feelings as ultimate reality, I could question them. And I was learning all this new wisdom that didn't match up with my experience. And I was like, well, if this ancient philosophy is saying this and it doesn't compete with what I'm experiencing, then maybe it's not the world that's bad. Maybe it's not everyone's out to get me, or maybe it's the way that I'm perceiving things. And so that was the first experience with that. And then I took another class that taught me, you can't control your external circumstances, but you can control the way you respond. And I was almost offended when I heard that because I was like, you can't control your emotions and thoughts, because when you have like such overwhelming emotions, or you have like horrible negative thoughts that just I'd be up till like 4 a.m. just thinking horrible things.
Yes, yes.
It's like I was like, what, you can't control. But then again, it was like me against an ancient philosophy. Maybe there's some truth to this. And so that was when I started actually believing like, okay, maybe this isn't how life is supposed to be.
And how long did that transformation take for you?
6 years.
Oh my gosh.
To the point where I felt like what I thought normal people felt like.
And in any of this time, because I always think this is important to talk about because no one ever does,
Mm-hmm.
in any of that time where you are, I don't want to say battling your mind, but when you're dealing with something inside, did you ever go the medical route, like therapy, medicine, anything like that?
Yeah, so in college, I think it was my freshman year. So before I took those philosophy classes, I had a bout of really bad panic attacks for a couple weeks, like to the point where I remember sitting in class and this wave of panic came over me, and I turned to the girl next to me and I was like, I feel like I should tell her to call 911. Like it was like I was completely just out of my mind. And so I went home to our family doctor, and she literally talked to me for 1 minute and was like, well, this is genetic, it runs in your family, so here's a prescription. And I
Mhm.
was like, you didn't even talk to me. And I had seen other people in my family become dependent on medication to just get through the day. And so I kind of put my foot down and was like, I know some people need medication, but I want to investigate this a little bit more. So I never filled the prescription. And then, yeah, as far as therapy goes, I went to therapy a couple times in college, mainly revolving around breakups, because that kind of sent me into this despair, which I think so often can do for a lot of us. But it just wasn't right for me. I think mental health is an ecosystem, and I think therapy is great for some people. Medicine is necessary for some people. For me, I'm very self-aware and very analytical. And so I had kind of already dug into the whole childhood thing of like why I am the way I am.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to move forward, but we kind of got stuck in the like, let's revisit all the trauma that happened to you. And I was kind of like, I already know, and I don't want to be a victim. So I want to actually change. And it just wasn't the right fit for me.
And were you able to then do all of that change and that work yourself?
Yes. I
That's
like,
awesome.
other than having a couple mentors in my professional life, I never, and then of course, supportive friends who like tolerated me while I was super negative and unpleasant to be around. I never like sought the help of a coach or anything. I just, yeah, just did it on my own through self-help books and studying philosophy and
That's
coming up with my
amazing.
own methods to change my thoughts and feelings.
And so this takes us to, I'm assuming, so we're after college, right? We're done
Mhm.
with college. did you go not straight into coaching then, right after college?
No, I joined a startup the year after college and
Mhm.
then did that for a year. And then I worked at this other organization in San Diego for a few years, and it was a great experience, but it was very high stress,
Mhm.
entrepreneurial. Um, and then I ended up quitting that job to travel the world for 6 months.
Wow.
Uh,
All
That was
right.
a much needed break. So I didn't do anything until I kind of did that and reset and came home.
That's amazing. And now you're, tell us, I guess, a little bit about everything that you are doing now and how that all started.
Yeah, so the main thing I do is I developed an 8-week program, which I call the 8 Universal Laws of Peace and Happiness. And it was developed looking back at my own experience being a self help junkie, because I think a lot of us, when we want to change something, we read 100 books and we listen to podcasts and we follow all these people. And in the moment, the information sounds great, but then it's like, okay, well, I'm not actually seeing changes in
Hmm.
myself. And so I actually wrote a practical philosophy, a draft of a book, and I was going to put it out there. And I was like, well, if I do this, then people are going to experience what I experienced. Well, they'll read it and then not really see changes. So I ended up transitioning that into an 8-week program where I teach people 8 basic principles that once you internalize them, there's no other result than to create peace and happiness in your life.
And how did coaching, like, I'm just even like fascinated by like, how does someone all of a sudden, and it's not all of a sudden, and I know that, but like coaching, that I'm going to do this coach. I mean, I'm a consultant technically and a coach, but I love hearing other people's stories too.
So do you want the like logical explanation or the like spiritual woo woo explanation?
I personally love the spiritual woo. That's just because where I am at, but
Okay.
I leave it up to you.
Well, so I'll just briefly explain the logical. So logically, it was like I had done all this work, I saw these changes, and I didn't want to work for someone else. So I thought, hey, I think I have something that could really help people. So I feel like it's my duty to,
Mhm.
create something out of this and also be my own boss. The spiritual woo-woo experience, which this is going to take a little bit of a tangent because I want to mention something
Yes.
that in your episode with Natalie Susie that you did recently,
Hmm.
I about spit my coffee out when she mentioned the book Journey of Souls.
Oh,
And she also mentioned that episode, kind of alluding to synchronicity, how when something gets mentioned a few times, you gotta. So I think this is your cue if you haven't read that book.
yeah, right.
Pick up
It is.
because this is the second time you're hearing it. But I read that book on my 27th birthday almost 2 years ago, and it completely flipped my world upside down. It was like I was coming home for the first time. Everything made sense. And I just saw all of the trials and tribulations of my life click. And it filled this void that I had had for a long time spiritually. And so leading to that, I actually, I don't think she mentioned this, but the book is written by a hypnotherapist. And
Mm,
the way that he constructed this concept of where we go between lives was by regressing patients in a hypnotic state who all said the same thing. Like they took him to the soul world. And so I was like, I have to do one of these sessions. And so I actually found a hypnotherapist that's trained in that type of hypnotherapy. And I went to the soul world and I met my soul. And that was like the what I needed to feel confident, like, yes, this is what you should be doing. This is you came to earth to experience these challenges so then you could create this program to help other people.
oh my God, I'm addicted now. I already know. Like, I hope that because you're in San Diego, that this person you saw is in San Diego.
Um,
That,
so so I'm not in San Diego anymore, but this person
oh,
is in Orange County, so
oh,
not
perfect. That's,
not too far. And there's a website I can send it to you afterwards so
oh,
you
I
can look
love
that
that.
up.
I,
Um,
I'm Natalie. I love Natalie. Like after that show, we just instantly clicked, and we're both even in this program together and doing some things. So anything that she recommends, I'm like all about. And you're right, like what you're talking about, that what do you call it? The things that keep, is that
Synchronicity.
synchronicity.
Yeah.
Um, I'm doing actually an exercise I just started last Monday where I'm putting all of, like most, I think, business owners, entrepreneurs, there's a lot of stuff all the time, right? A lot of ideas and a lot of places that we want to go. And what I'm doing now in particular, and you do it with business, you can do it with personal life, with whatever, is instead of thinking about them forever, the minute they come in, and I do it actually on my phone, which is a little bit cheating, I type it out on my phone and then in the evening write them out in little
Mm.
sticky notes and put them in this box.
Mm.
And I leave that box there. So then I don't think about it again. I don't worry. I'm not going to go down the tangent of how to make it happen and then all the ways that it won't work. That's it. I wrote it down and I'm done with it. It is freed up. I'm not joking. Like half of my day, at least, I
Yeah.
feel like I have available now because I'm not thinking of all
Mm.
of those ideas and projects.
Yeah.
And what I do is the same thing, like interest, books, that book is actually in there, like all of these things. And I wait at the end of the week, and it's only been 1 week. This will be the next week. At the end of the week, I check which ones showed up multiple times.
Mm.
Those are the ones that I explore.
I love that. I want to do
Yeah, like
that.
I love that you mentioned that because it is working. It's working. It's actually working so intently. I just did a summit with Natalie,
Mhm.
Conscious Entrepreneur Summit, and I had this crazy idea because I watched a TV show and then a documentary came on, and it was all about diversity.
Mhm.
And I'm not hiding or anything. Like I'm gay. I have a husband and a son, but I've never been in that community a lot. And so I just had this idea, like, God, I just did this business summit. Maybe I can do something for that. And how, I don't know how, I don't know the details, but I can't think about it. I wrote it down. That idea came up last week, 14 or 15 times. I can't remember that I had to write it down.
Oh my
And then I saw a human rights speech that they just gave, and everything clicked. And in like a weekend, like literally this past weekend, I connected with 7 people, like gay, LGBTQ, whatever, leaders, 5 in the US, 2 in Europe, all about like, how can we put this big project together? And it
God.
is, I'm just telling you, like, it is that idea, that synchronicity, that thing of like, can you control things? I just love that you brought it up because I
Mhm.
didn't even think about it, but I'm like, God, that's such an important thing.
Yeah, well, and synchronicity, a lot of it is your subconscious mind looking for things in your environment. So
Mm,
things you might have overlooked if you hadn't already had it come into your mind
yeah.
seem that much more special.
So I love having coaches, especially coaches that have anything to do with happiness, because I just think the world as a whole needs so much more happiness.
Mhm.
Um, what for you, because I feel like I never hear this and I want to know, for you as a coach, what's the hardest part?
Um, I mean, a couple things. It's hard to see people struggling because it's like, you know how it feels to have these thought patterns. And it's almost hard for me to put myself back into those situations sometimes because I'm so different now.
Mm,
Um, but I would also say a hard part is to get people to let go of certain beliefs because the way that I approach happiness is, a lot of people think, rightly so, that happiness comes from adding more good things to your life, like more relationships and more abundance and all these things that are awesome. But the problem is most people don't change the way that they respond to all the things that take away from their happiness. So it's like if you're
mm,
constantly feeling annoyed at your coworkers or frustrated by your family members or all these moments that are stolen from you, that's the quickest way to get happy, is to change the way you respond to those things. And a lot of times it's hard to get people to see, like, you have every right to be mad, you have every right to be frustrated, but do you want to change your belief to be different so you can let that go? And sometimes, societal things will affect that. Like, I always use the example of how oftentimes we get frustrated when someone's late to meet with us,
mm,
right? It's an automatic, why is this person late? It's so rude. And people will think, well, I'm frustrated because this person's late. But in reality, why you're frustrated is because you believe that when someone's late, it's a waste of your time and that it's disrespectful. So
mhm.
that's coming from your own belief.
Yep.
So you don't actually have to be frustrated, but you need new wisdom. And that's what I help people see is, like, if you don't want to be frustrated, what different belief would serve you positively? And it takes some letting go because everyone thinks it's rude to be late, but it just comes down to, do you want to be happy or do you want to hold on to things for the principle of the matter? That's probably the toughest part.
I I'm my stuff is obviously business focused in the, like, I don't know why I said real world. We're in the real world, but I just couldn't imagine. You know what I mean? Like I do so much work on myself, and with coaches and healers and all of that, and I could not imagine how hard that would be to help. Like I can't. I am always worried. I meet people, my healer, and I'm always like, I might be your worst client. So just, I want you to be prepared. Like, it's gonna be tough for you. So just get ready. But yeah, that would have to be so hard to let them go. And I'd even think like, and to then for you to go back into that, because you know that you're there helping because you were in that.
I think that, like, I think the silver lining of all of this is when you show people these beliefs, especially you teach them how these things got ingrained into them, whether it's society. We learn so much growing up, we just absorb things until we're like 7 or 8, and then that becomes our reality. Then it shows them that, okay, there's nothing actually broken about you, it's just you've been programmed. You're like a computer program.
Yeah.
Like, computer programs are designed to carry out functions based on rules and logic. Same with you. If you have the rules and logic that when someone is late, you should be, is rude, what do you think you're going to be? You're going to be frustrated, right? So it just shows the good part about it is, like, once you show people that thought process, they really believe, like, okay, there's nothing broken about me. It's just I need to change this using new wisdom. So
Yeah.
that's.
I love that. I guess I have a topical personal question. And so like, don't worry if you're like, no, I don't want to get into that. But I recently was I'm in a couple of groups, right? And I recently was in one, and someone had mentioned sort of what you're talking about, like society's influence on you and how that plays a role. Mm-hmm. Which somehow I was involved, but led into this conversation of like, being a minority. I'm half Mexican, half white. My son's half black, half white. And I just, in my mind, honestly thought, everyone knows this. Why wouldn't people not know this? I'm like, yeah, well, I got to get ready. He's growing up. I'm going to have that talk with him where I got to tell him like what you can and can't wear, what you're supposed to say, not say, who you can and can't trust. Some people were like on it. I was literally just like a comment that I made sort of like out of nowhere, thinking everybody would know this. It sparked into something I did not mean it to spark into, because people were sort of on opposite sides of it and didn't know, like, what are you talking about? Why would you tell kids this? Like, in that way of like, okay, that's obviously we have different experiences, right? That's what it is. We're both have different experiences with what is going on, or I guess what would be your biggest advice? Because I think it's so crucial right now for you. If you don't have that experience, great. Let's say I have that experience. I think COVID is an easy one to say everybody now has to have this experience because it's something out external. Mm-hmm. What's your number one piece of advice for someone who is saying like, I'm affected by this? I feel like, even because it's emotional, right? Like it's affecting me in some way, to handle that. Because I think that's a big one. And I think this is the first time, at least I know for me in history, where I've seen every person actually has to say, this affects me in some way. You can't deny that this is there.
Yeah, one of the big things I teach people is transforming adversity into opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so obviously this is a widespread adverse time. Yeah. But what I tell people to do is look back at the previous challenges you've been through. There's always been a positive lesson or some type of growth. But what we usually do is we resist and we struggle and we complain through it. And then years later, we're like, oh, okay, well, you know, looking back, it's not that bad. And I'm kind of glad I went through that, right? So if we always know a positive lesson is coming, then why can't we approach the current situation with foresight? You know, for instance, yeah, it's terrible, all this has happened, but it's probably made you more health conscious. It's probably forced you to tighten up areas of your budget that, because a lot of people are struggling with finances, maybe you've lost your job and it's the opportunity to get into starting your own business or an industry you've really been wanting to go into. So just like looking at your past challenges and seeing how those helped you grow, you can use that in this circumstance.
I love that. And it's one of those things I think some of us take for granted, because that's where my mind went right away. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, yeah, I had a tough week, like some of me and my friends all had a tough week a couple weeks ago, but honestly, right away, I did go like, oh God, well, I guess now's the time to do that class that I bought a year ago that I've never done, you know, or whatever. So I love that you said that. It's about really taking perspective. And I love it when people talk about using their past or experiences in a good way, mm-hmm. like learning from them instead of like, this has happened to you. And yeah, like it's such a different approach that I think people aren't used to.
Well, I think the crazy part is like, I would have never said that years ago because I was a complete pessimist my whole life. So it didn't matter what was happening. There was always a negative spin on it. But training my mind. I call it stacking weights. It's like the more you think and feel positively, the more you stack weights on the scale and on the positive side of your brain, training you to think and feel positively into the future. So like if you tend to approach challenges with more worry and a negative mindset, it becomes a math equation of, okay, I need to try to stop thinking so negatively about it, but that's really hard. So I need to pump myself full of positivity until that scale flips. And then that, I remember when my scale flipped on my birthday a few years ago, like something stupid happened, but I normally would have been really upset by it. And instead I was really grateful. And I was like, did I really do this? And I was like, that's when I knew that it happened, and I've never looked back. But again, it's like that math equation of like, if you want to approach challenges more positively, you have to be vigilant about protecting your mindset and putting more positivity in.
How did this transformation, how did it not affect, but how did you get, what was the reaction, I should say, from family and friends? Because this is a huge transformation.
Oh yeah, I mean, even in the first, because I said it took me about 6 years, even in the first couple years, people notice. They're like, you seem really different. And because, and I just look back and it's like, I feel awful at how draining and how negative I was. So I think, it took me a while to get over that shame and that guilt, because at the core, people know who you are, right? It's like my personality hasn't really changed. I'm just a lot happier than I used to. So, but they definitely noticed a difference and definitely happy for me. So
that's awesome. And since I asked you what is so hard, I want to know what's easy and the best part of what you do.
Well, I mean, seeing obviously the transformations, like, if I could explain a little bit about my methods, I think that would help. Please. Explain. Yeah, so I teach people a lot about how their subconscious mind works. And it's shocking to me that more people don't know about it, because your subconscious mind actually chooses your emotions. So when you act with frustration or anger, that's your subconscious choosing that. And then you usually rationalize with a thought like, oh yeah, it is rude that they're late, right? And so I teach people how their mind works. And then I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. And so what I've done is I create audio recordings that supplement my program that give people's brains the repetition they need until this wisdom becomes second nature. So, because again, like I said, when you read a book or sometimes you even take a program, and in the moment you're like, yes, yes, and then you don't see lasting changes, it's because your brain hasn't been given enough repetition. And so I think that's been the most exciting thing, and it all stemmed from Journey of Souls. That's why I wanted to be a hypnotherapist, because of that book. And just combining hypnotherapy with this wisdom and getting people, like, so many people have said they're the happiest they've ever been in their life in 8 weeks from this program, simply by like basic wisdom that we forget.
Amazing. That is amazing. I don't even know. I'm sure Natalie will probably text me later. I'm gonna have to talk to her about this, because this is amazing. Have you heard of I'm gonna say this wrong, just heads up. Honopono. It's a Hawaiian meditation.
Wait, yes, I have. I just read this in a book the other day.
Oh, yeah. Well, now it's your turn. Now you're hearing it multiple times. Yeah. Like I did it once last week. It was actually part of our homework in this program. I'm with Natalie, and I did it again last night, because I am, like, I'm sure you know, when you're in your mind all the time, it is so easy for you to, and also be a high achiever. It's so easy for me to be like, here's an assignment, I'm going to get it done. That does not mean though that I like took it in. Just means I got it done.
Internalize, yeah.
Yeah. So I knew I didn't really get into it last week, and I got into it last night. And I will say, although I'm like an avid, like, I need to figure this out because meditation is so hard for me. This one, I don't know what about it, but something clicked a little bit. I will, like, so if you haven't heard of it, you should. It's this Hawaiian meditation of forgiveness. And so, you're forgiving others, yourself, circumstance, like whatever it is. And yeah, there's something about it that actually, it really did click. And it was actually, I think, a YouTube link. I'll probably put it in the comment section when it's here, but you should for sure check it out if you haven't done it. Especially, I mean, I'm gonna have to connect you with Natalie, because you guys seem so aligned.
Yeah. Well, can I recommend, because I'm not a big meditator either, and a lot of my students, they're like, when I meditate, I feel good, and then it's like I just go back to my normal racing thoughts. And so you should check out self-hypnosis. So It's
Okay.
really similar to guided meditation, but it just uses more relaxation techniques to get you in a state where you're receptive to positive affirmations. So I kid you not, like the first self-hypnosis recording I made for confidence a couple years ago, I had struggled with horrible self-worth my whole life. And within 1 week, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna write a book. Not a big deal.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm
That's
gonna do X,
amazing.
Y, and Z. And I was like, what the heck? But it was because it occurred subconsciously, and my subconscious was choosing confidence instead of choosing worry. And that's what, like I mentioned, the transformation, that's why it feels like magic, because it doesn't take that much work. You're just like passively listening to positive things for like overcoming anxiety or compassion or all these things that actually train you to make that your default mode of operation. So I'm not a meditator either. I totally get that, but you should check out self
I love
hypnosis.
that. Well, before we go, I have one last question that I like to ask everybody.
Okay.
And you've made such a great transformation, and what you're doing is so powerful and it's so needed. Um, what's one thing that you would tell that little girl if she were in front of you today?
Hmm. I love that one. That's a sweet one. I would probably tell her that there's nothing wrong with you, which I think is a common thing a lot of people would tell themselves. But I think saying like this isn't all there is to life. Like you're not just going to be miserable one day. You're going to be so freaking happy you can't believe it, and you're going to help other people be happy too.
I love that. So before we check out, please tell us, how do people get a hold of you and how can they reach out? What channels?
Yeah, so my website is my name, KaylaTrautwein.com. It's a little hard to spell, but hopefully you can.
We'll put it in the comments.
Yeah. And then same on Instagram. Yeah, just send me a message on the website or Instagram.
And your 8-week program is they can sign up at any point.
Yeah, so I actually transitioned it recently into an online course. So
perfect.
actually do it at your own pace and all that. So that information's on my website too.
Perfect. Kayla, I have to thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing talking to you and just talking about these, I think, really key elements on how we all can really transform to be a better person and to be a purpose and a potential that we all can have.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul, for having me. And again, thanks for everyone for tuning in.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for being here, and we will see you next week. Hey, guys. Hope you enjoyed that latest episode of In Your Mind with Kayla. Please help me thank Kayla so much for being here. It was an amazing, amazing episode. Make sure to check out Kayla's links and ways to get a hold of her in our section below. And do not forget, we need your help. So please like, share, comment, leave feedback. We want to hear from you. And make sure to check us out next Wednesday for another episode.